Alla Tulia Meldonia Ahara Mariese, and welcome to our first fun fact video in this series. So today, and by that I mean the day that I'm recording this, I woke up to the news, as I'm sure many of you did too, that Sir Ian Holm had sadly passed away. And so in today's video, I want to honour him and the character that he played so wonderfully in the Lord of the Rings movies. Now, I'm not going to go too much into the details of Bilbo Baggins' life, because that's less of a fact and more just the plot of The Hobbit. But what I do want to do is cast some light on what sort of person Bilbo was before the Quest of Erebor, and who he became after it. So, right at the heart of Bilbo's character, and at the heart of The Hobbit, is this dichotomy between the two Bilbos. You see, on the one hand, there is Bilbo, son of Bungo. Now, Tolkien tells us that Bilbo Baggins, Bilbo's father, was a well-respected and well-to-do hobbit who was considered a solid and comfortable fellow by his neighbours in Hobbiton. You see, Bungo was everything you'd expect from a humble half-foot hobbit. In fact, he's even the guy who built Bag End. Well, I can't imagine he did much of the heavy lifting, but he's the one who excavated it. Using his wife's money, of course. And Tolkien tells us that Bilbo was so similar to his father in both looks and mannerisms that he was considered a second edition of Bungo himself. But then there is the other Bilbo. Bilbo, son of Belladonna. Now, Bilbo's mother, Belladonna Took, is described as one of three remarkable daughters of the old Took, head of the hobbits who lived across the water. Now, I don't want to over-speculate or throw around too much conjecture, but I find it very interesting that Professor Tolkien's own mother, Mabel Suffield, was also one of three remarkable daughters of one John Suffield, who, just like Bilbo's grandfather, the old Took, lived an enormously long life. And, in fact, one of these three Suffield sisters even owned a house called Bag End. And without wanting to draw too many parallels between the creator and his characters, just like Bilbo, Tolkien was the child of these two conflicting family ideologies. Now, in Tolkien's case, this conflict was between the Catholic Suffields on his mother's side and the Protestant Tolkiens on his father's side. And of course, with Bilbo, the conflict is between the much more adventurous Took family of his mother Belladonna and the homespun Baggins family of his father Bungo. But anyway, that is enough conjecture for the moment. Back to Bilbo. In The Hobbit, Tolkien tells us that it was often said, in other families, that long ago one of the Took ancestors must have taken a fairy wife. Although Tolkien does go on to say that was, of course, absurd, but certainly there was still something not entirely Hobbit-like about them. And once in a while, members of the Took clan would go and have adventures. So we can see from the very outset that Bilbo's entire life is like a duel between these two sides of his ancestry. But despite the fact that Bilbo does indeed famously go off on an adventure, I don't believe he ever truly chooses the Took over the Baggins. But nor does he choose the Baggins over the Took. See, throughout Bilbo's life, there are a number of instances where he transforms himself from living a quiet Baggins life to going off on a Tookish adventure. But then he comes back again. And then he goes off again, this time to Rivendell. But there he settles down and lives a quiet life of poetry and rest amongst the elves. Until he ventures away once more on his final journey to the Grey Havens and beyond. So it seems that Bilbo never truly lets the Baggins side take over, but nor does he let his Took heritage define him. He seems to consolidate them both into a life well lived. And of course, when Bilbo's nephew Frodo, who is technically his second cousin once removed, loses his parents in a boating accident, it is Bilbo who adopts the lad and teaches him the ways of the wider world and educates him in the elven languages. And this aids Frodo in navigating his own dual heritage between Baggins and Brandybuck, and it also comes in very handy when Frodo goes off on his own quest. Now, we all know what becomes of Bilbo during The Lord of the Rings, and we know that his tale ends with one last adventure across the sea. But there is one last little detail about Bilbo that we won't find anywhere in the books. You see, in 1968, that's 13 years after The Return of the King was published, Professor Tolkien's secretary, who's a lady named Joy Hill, discovered a poem in Tolkien's library that was titled Bilbo's Last Song. And Tolkien gave Joy this poem as a free gift, as a token of gratitude for her work on my behalf. So, as I read this poem, spare a thought for Sir Ian Holm, and for Joy Hill, and for Tolkien himself. And picture Bilbo, standing on that ship, with Middle-earth behind him and the western horizon in front. And let him fade away across the sea. Day is ended, dim my eyes, but journey long before me lies. Farewell, friends, I hear the call, the ships beside the stony wall. Foam is white and waves are grey, beyond the sunset leads my way. Foam is salt and wind is free, I hear the rising of the sea. Farewell, friends, the sails are set, the wind is east, the moorings fret. Shadows long before me lie, beneath the ever-bending sky. But islands lie behind the sun, that I shall raise ere all is done. Lands there are to west of west, where night is quiet and sleep is rest. Guided by the lonely star, beyond the utmost harbour bar, I'll find the heavens fair and free, and beaches of the starlit sea. Ship, my ship, I seek the west, and fields and mountains ever blessed. Farewell to Middle-earth at last, I see the star above my mast. Thank you all very much for watching, and until next time, dear friends, much love. Stay groovy and navaer, mellyn.